Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on SQL Server 2016. Presenting today, we have Neil Hambly, SQL and BI Practice Leader from Northdoor, Fabienne Porquet, Microsoft Licensing Specialist from Bytes, and Maria Singleton, SAM Licensing Practice Manager, also from Bytes. Just going to run through some quick housekeeping with you all. During the webinar you will be muted, but you can submit questions anytime throughout the webinar. Just use the questions box on the right hand side of your screen. There will be a Q&A session at the end to answer any of the questions that you may have. The webinar recording will be made available to you, and I will get this sent out to you in the next couple of days. And also, if you please could complete the critique form at the end of the webinar, that would be much appreciated. I'm just going to run through a couple of points about the Northdoor and Bytes relationship. Northdoor have been a major Bytes partner for over 3 years. They specialise in 3 key data areas, that being store IT, protect IT and using IT. This key focus of theirs has allowed us to help customers ensure that their data is effectively and efficiently stored, secured and used to drive business decisions. It is also important to note that they have a premier partnership with Microsoft and IBM, making them a perfect partner for us to work with. I will now hand you over to Neil from Northdoor, who will be presenting the feature overview section of the SQL Server 2016. Thank you, Neil.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. So, first off, very quickly, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown who Northdoor are and what we can help with in terms of kind of SQL Server itself. So first off, Northdoor itself are an IT consultancy, and we specialize in the data journey, how to use that data and maximize the capabilities from that. We've been around for over 25 years, and we do help our clients solve those difficult business problems using the data they have. We are data focused, and we effectively have 3 areas. We have what we call store it, protect it and use it. And we go through kind of a consultancy-led approach to most of our engagements. So we advise, we're able to implement and also manage those projects with our clients. 8 of our 10 clients are also have been with us for more than 10 years. So we've been around for some time, and we build relationships with our clients. And as I said earlier, we are a Microsoft partner, and we hold gold level certification in data platform, application development and cloud platform. And we're also silver in collaboration, content and data analytics. Shown on the screen here, you also can see that we have kind of an approach that we take where our applications, may touch one or more areas of these 3 kind of pillars. The store it with storage and systems and cloud, protect it with security, and use it with big data and analytics, collaboration and productivity, and the SQL and BI. And the SQL and BI is the practice that I lead. And we do our services across the whole data journey, and we help kind of find those data kind of analysis and exploit the data to get those kind of competitive edge to that. So that's kind of who Northdoor are, and we'll come back to that a bit later on maybe in the presentation. So what I'm going to do now is quickly kind of take you through a bit of a kind of an overview, a bit of a kind of high-level feature review about the latest release of SQL Server 2016. And you may have seen that it's actually tagged as kind of everything built in. So what I'm going to do now is kind of describe to you what that actually is and how we kind of can kind of understand more about SQL Server 2016, the box version, and also the version that's available in the Azure technology. So first off, I'm going to quickly kind of throw up a couple of entries on the screen here. So we are an industry leader in mission critical OLTP, according to the Gartner kind of quadrant at the moment. So I'm going to show you what that looks like now. And we'll get that screen up in a second. Most secure database. Over the last 6 years, we've been able to be the most secure database platform across all of the competitors out there. The highest performing data warehouse. So being able to take those capabilities about performance and move that into analytics, and how do we get that to process around kind of getting the analysis into a data warehouse and getting the performance point through that. End-to-end mobile. So this is a new capability in what's known as reporting services, and they're able to take those reports and put them onto any device and have that end-to-end mobile reporting. And finally, the in-data analytics, the R. So kind of quickly just going to bring up some more data. So here we're showing again the industry quadrant. We're right in that top quadrant now. We're the market leader. We had that 6 years in a row, least vulnerable. With the performance points, so for the TBCH kind of performance benchmarks for that, we hold the top 3. And actually, even our closest really competitor, Oracle, is way down in the top, kind of number 5th spot at the moment. Being able to do that self-service BI at a fraction of the cost of any of our competitors, so less than 4 times what Tableau is, and around about 18 times less than Oracle itself. And being able to do that analytics now and really kind of push through the capabilities of analyzing the data, doing statistics on that, and really trying to take that, but across multiple petabytes of data, and really being able to kind of take that through to the next stage of analyzing that data and getting that competitive edge by having those analytics throughout the data you have, because that data is the lifeblood of your business, hopefully, or is most of the case. Also being able to take all of those workloads and put it into in-memory technologies now. We're kind of the first of breed really to try to do that across all of these different technologies. And we want to give you a consistent experience. So whether you're working with Azure or on premises, you're using the same tools and technologies to do that. So here's a quick kind of repeat on some of the information I've got there. But this is just a high-level snapshot of some of the things that are kind of available today in the latest release. So let's talk about the performance tier first. Operational analytics. So all of your kind of OLTP workloads and being able to take those and push those into an in-memory structure. So being able to take the concurrency issues that we always used to have and take those away, have frictionless kind of concurrency now, be able to scale that up across millions and thousands of users without having the performance impact of lock-in and latch-in that would have kind of held us back from that scalability. Being able to take that data and move that into an in-memory kind of structure so that we can get the performance gains and actually kind of get the CPU activity from these high-performance CPUs available today and really push that across multiple terabytes of database. So for example, we now on Windows Server 2016 and SQL Server 2016 be able to leverage 12 terabytes, that's terabytes of data and memory across 16 processors, 240 cores or 480 if you hyper-thread them. That's going to give you a substantial amount of processing power that wasn't available prior to recent times. We also have capabilities of something called query data store, which allows us to analyze the performance of our query plans that are the key performance indicators of how we get the data out of the system, how we process that. Understanding what those problems are and how we process them allows us to get those performance issues solved really, really quickly without spending many days and hours trying to figure that out. We've added in additional JSON capabilities, temporal data support. This is an area we're going to cover later on in this webinar around being able to look at data at various points in time historically and also track all those audit changes. Moving into probably an area that all of us need to be really concerned with, security. We now have something what's called always encrypted. That's the data not only at rest, but in transit, being able to keep that completely encrypted all the way through the journey. There's some additional capabilities called row-level security, RLS, and data masking, dynamic data masking. And we're going to cover that in a little bit more detail as well. And there's some whole kind of raft of additional other security elements there as well. To kind of audit things, to have that TTD support for very large in-memory objects as well as traditional disk-based objects as well. Probably one of the key reasons why people want to use SQL Server versus other kind of technologies is we have the availability functions built into the technology. So being able to do what's known as enhanced always on now with the SQL 2016 release. We can go up to 3 synchronous replicas. So that's 3 replicas for your on-premises environments, your primary replica and 2 additional synchronous replicas. We can actually even now put load balancing around those replicas and actually define the routing list and which ones are the priority order of what they fail over to. We can have those failovers happen based on health issues that are identified with the data that's being captured from the system. So if things start to kind of slow down and be a problem, it can identify those and provide automatic failover. We've added additional support for TDC, so cross-database transactional capabilities now included and with the always-on technology. So the support for integration services with always-on. So we've taken those technologies that we introduced in recent versions and we've enhanced those significantly in this latest release. Finally, kind of the scalability, being able to take that workload and kind of improve the throughput and scalability of those by actually enhancing the capabilities of caching data, using the multi-core, having that kind of use of all those SMP processors if they were available, and kind of improving out-of-the-box installation, kind of multiple temp DBs and other kind of things I've not even spoke about now that kind of we won't have time to go through everything. So why would we choose SQL Server and why would we want to upgrade and go to that? So let's kind of look at our competitor Oracle as an example here. Now, let's add in the OLTP functionality. So, and then on top of that, we're going to add the ETL. So you can see the price is increasing as we go through this process. We then want to add in some data warehousing. So these are add-ons for Oracle. So as we add more functionality, we have to pay a higher price point for this. Finally, we're going to need to probably bring in the business intelligence. We're up to over $3.4 million worth of licensing at this point. And finally, there's a final kind of R server capability now, both in SQL Server and Oracle. How much is it going to cost for the equivalent SQL Server here? Less than 1/12 or around about 1/12 the cost. We add all the in-memory technologies to get that performance point. That doesn't exist in all of the Oracle environments. So in-memory across everything, end-to-end security, advanced analytics, the mobile BI reporting. We are the market leaders in these technologies here, and it's all built in. Let's take a problem that probably most organizations are trying to tackle today, a real-time operational analytics capability. So let's kind of describe what the kind of process might be. We have a commercial or commerce application, and we're taking some transactions through, and we're going to put that into an OLTP SQL Server database. We're probably going at this point be taking some of that data through an ETL, extract, transform, and load process, and moving that into a SQL Server data warehouse infrastructure. And that might take anywhere from 2 to 24 hours, depends on the amount of data and the processing that we need to do on that. So what we have is a business problem in that we don't have the amount of access to that data in the time that we need to be able to kind of really get that real-time analytics understood, maybe like fraud detection, possibly kind of looking at marketing trends or buying trends, that kind of stuff. So let's see if we move into the in-memory technologies available today in 2016 and repeat this process. So again, the same transactions going into a OLTP database. But now what we can do is the in-memory column store and in-memory OLTP can be interlaced, can be actually built one on top of the other. This means that we can actually really now get that real-time business problem detection, that fraud detection, that kind of how that data is being analyzed real time to maybe adjust your business plans and your marketing strategies. We can take those queries that took maybe minutes or even hours and take those down to minutes and to seconds, from minutes to seconds. We can get that 30 times or higher throughput and scalability because we're now using the memory technologies as opposed to the traditional kind of data storage set. So we really have been able to now take over the operational insights to that in a near real-time or real-time operational capability. But let's talk about some of the other capabilities that were added or improved in 2016. Simplifying the HA, high availability in DR, disaster recovery, and also adding efficiencies by the hybrid cloud technology. So let me kind of just give you a quick scenario here. We have a database that's on SQL Server, and it's a mission critical application. So your businesses demand this to be highly available. I'm now going to create maybe up to 2 or 3 synchronous replicas on premises, so that in the event of an issue that's going to affect availability, we can now effectively fail over to one of our highly available replicas in a very short time frame, maybe even seconds. But I've also got a DR strategy I need to add to this as well. And maybe my DR strategy needs to be in Azure capable because of the price point for Azure, and also other capabilities of scale up and scale down that we want to have in the Azure framework. Being able to run backups, scale out that BI reporting, and all through in asynchronous replicas capable. So there's a little bit of latency there, but we have the capability of combining these and getting just out of the box an upgrade from, say, 2014, faster HA and DR than we ever had before. This is probably one of the things that I'm really excited about, and this is the ability to effectively secure the database really well. So before we've had TDE, which is transparent data encryption. So that was data at rest encrypted, and also we can have encrypted backups. Here we have a new capability, which is always encrypted. So we're going to use the new kind of libraries available. And here's an example of some data in a patient's table, where we're going to now want to look up a value. So we're going to want to look for a certain record. I can take that record and I can then send that query across the SQL Server fully encrypted. So the record itself comes over with an encrypted string for what we're looking for. It then does the lookup on the encrypted data within inside SQL Server, grabs that record set and sends that back across fully encrypted still. So the full process from sending it to SQL and getting it back from SQL is a fully encrypted process. It then gets decrypted in the application without impacting database performance. So this is an improvement on what we had before from security. But let's talk about some of the other things, like maybe data privacy. So one of the things we can do now, and I'm going to kind of explain what I think is going to be a fantastic new capability here, is we can actually find control access as to who sees what data from what rows. So it allows us to secure that data even further by kind of saying who can see this data and who can't, who can update that data and who can't. So we've got filter predicate and we've got blocking predicate as two technologies to enforce kind of access to data. But let's say today you actually have separate databases for each of your clients because you wanted to put different security models in place. Now think about it as having one central database with your client data only stored once, but now you can control who sees what data, who updates what data, purely because you can actually now put this row level security in place. But there's more. So we've got the fine control access, we've got the application transparency. You do not need to make application changes. It's compatible with lots and lots of systems here and products. So you just kind of deploy SQL 2016 and your applications will just work with row level security in there. And you can put this logic right into your database and control that logic easier and through system kind of controls, through change management and all these other additional capabilities that we can have. So you can now have a single database or single table accessing multiple users and for many customers. That's going to reduce maybe your overhead for all your systems requirements. You don't have a need to have 20 systems now. You can maybe centralize some of this capability. And here's some of the ways that it kind of gets improved. So we've got the predicate function, we've got security predicate, and we've got policies. We can apply these to the tables, to inline functions. And we can do this all with the same performance points that we had before. So we get the same performance because the logic's now embedded inside of the code, which gets interpreted by the engine very quickly. So there's no additional overhead to applying this technology. Scalability is probably another area where I need to do more with what I have today. I need to get the best price performance level point available. Well, we can do that. We have the #1 TBCH benchmark for 1 terabyte, 10 terabytes. We get the throughput on the same hardware. So literally just deploy SQL 2016 on the same hardware today and you're going to get a boost in terms of the way that that hardware can deliver performance through your system. And SAP benchmarks as well. So 2016, SQL with Windows Server 2016 can access 12 terabytes of memory, 16 processors with 240 cores, or hyperthread that 480. You think of the performance you can actually deliver with that system. Data warehouse performance. So a lot of organizations have data warehouses, and they have different data marts, different sizes, but some of those sizes can be, a few terabytes, a few gigabytes, but they can go up to petabytes. So we need to be able to say, how do we deliver on premises or in the cloud, or a hybrid combination of that, and really make use of the technology today and the features that have come out in this latest release to have the highest performance data warehouse out there. So scaling those databases to that petabyte size, being able to use that T-SQL structures against that, and the additional analytics that's available today, the Hadoop clusters and all the analytics that we want to be able to bring to the table and say, let's analyze this data, let's do the trending on this data, let's figure out what's there. But doing it at a price point that's significantly less than anybody else. So for example, around about half the cost of Oracle X data there. The kind of end-to-end business intelligence, the mobile reporting, we have now a much improved SQL Server 2016 reporting services infrastructure. So we can create the mobile reports, we can create paginated reports, and we can do this in a number of different tools. But effectively, the tools are much richer than they were, and the speed of producing those reports is much quicker than we ever had before. We have the DataZen server itself, which was a product that was bought and now is being integrated into SSRS. And we can also integrate that with SharePoint as well. So we can kind of take these technologies and really embed them to be able to deliver the reports out onto your infrastructure as quickly as you need. But you know what? You may need some of these on apps. You may need some of these on mobile. So we have the ability to now use the DataZen mobile apps, the report server web portal for paginated and mobile reports, render those reports PDFs and much more across lots of different kind of dashboards, Power BI integration. There's so much I can talk about on this area that we just don't have today, but there's a change in the kind of reporting capabilities that we didn't have before. We can now really deliver the reports anywhere, anytime to any user. And this is how we kind of do it through modern browsers, through any device. We're creating those reports, and we effectively hit any of those data sources that you have out there. So SQL Server databases, Ava databases, for example, OLAP and Ava kind of tabular systems, and just a raft of Ava data sources as well, to be able to kind of take that and consume that in the latest browsers and portals available. So we're able to take the in-memory technologies to get those really fast reports, being able to model those with a whole range of new DAX functionalities. So this is the kind of analytics of the data, and being able to kind of get that analysis of what the data is, be able to run direct queries directly against that to get the insights down to sub-second or more, and scale that across multiple data sets as well that could be petabyte in scale. And be able to take those devices and those reports and just put them onto devices without having to create lots and lots of different technologies. So for example, HTML5 as a technology to really kind of render those reports richly into the infrastructure. So kind of just confirming the kind of R technology, which is the kind of statistics that's going to be built into the SQL Server, mission critical OLTP, layer on top of that your high performance data warehouse, your end-to-end mobile reporting, and now add on top of that your analytics, and you're where you need to be in order to deliver the analysis on your data, get those real-time operational analytics without moving that data, being able to take the kind of queries to the data, and now putting the open source R across the in-memory technologies and parallelizing that through multiple threading there. One of the things that is also new that you may want to consider and look at is I've got some data in my database, but how much of that is kind of legacy old data that sits kind of in the database and just bloats really my infrastructure. So I want to be able to access this data, but I maybe want to access it and just kind of archive it a little bit. So we have something called stretch database, and it's also integrated with always encrypted. So again, all your data is fully encrypted in this process. You take some of that data, and for example, let's say we're going to take the order history data. And we've got some dates here. You can see there's 2005 and 2014. And we're going to take, say, all the 2005 data and move it up into a stretch database. When we query the database and we want to look at data that's now stretched and put into the Azure cloud, it runs a distributed query up into the cloud, gets the data, brings it back down. The latencies are very, very low as well. So you're not kind of going to spend minutes trying to restore data from, or hours restoring data from backups and tapes. You can access this in seconds, and latency is extremely close to real time on premises. No application changes. You're going to save you money because it's a lower cost ownership of this data in Azure than it would be on premises. So you can dedicate your on-premise systems to be that real-time current data sets. And this is all fully encrypted and queryable and no application changes. So you're thinking, okay, this is something I want to do. I want to move to a 2014 or 2005 to 2014, 2005 to 2012. Actually, 2016 is on the roadmap here now. Maybe I need to go straight to 2016. How do I do this? So we can actually clone that environment, move that to maybe a 2014, do your testing fully there, or a 2016 straight away today, and actually kind of take advantage of the new capabilities straight away. But say, hey, 2016 is just out the door. Maybe I'm not comfortable. This has been in production for over 18 months in Azure. There's more than 1.75 million databases out there that are currently using this technology. The on-premises version of 2016 is the second kind of release of 2016. The Azure version is the cloud first. That's where it's been developed. That's where it's been put out and it's been tested, and we've been able to enhance and tweak that product. And it then eventually gets into the on-boxed premises version, which we can kind of take out. But also we have the abilities to use query plans and data store and use the new tools to actually upgrade this very, very easily and do all the compatibility testing to make sure this works. And we're kind of coming to the amount of time kind of at the end of this session now where I'm going to kind of just quickly touch on one more item, and then we're going to do a quick summary. Prior to 2016, if you wanted to look at historical data, you had to put a lot of effort into maybe adding triggers, store procedures, and it was hard to apply all this and also maintain good performance. Usually they had a significant performance hit. I want to look at the history. I want to maintain that. And especially if you were going to start trying to analyze that data, it required a lot more data sources, a lot more kind of storage, and it was hard to do the analytics on that. And protection was never guaranteed. Somebody could go and make the changes to that. In 2016, we have what's known as temporal tables. These are system tables. You effectively define that you're going to do temporal data on this. The schema maintenance is all automatic and online. The history is all automatic and optimal. It tracks this, it knows how to do it, it uses very concurrent systems, so multi-versioning, concurrency control, background kind of operations, so it's effectively in-memory objects that get created to do this. The analytics is saying, I want to run a query from this data set, and I'm going to use the for system time and give a time value. And what that means is I can say, well, what was the value last Tuesday at 2:05? And it can go and tell me what the value was at that point. I don't have to start trying to figure out and write lots of complicated code for that. And the data is protected because it's system data and you can't access those changes. So no one can go in and make, oh, I'm just going to go make this change and hide this data. No, none of that's possible. It's locked down. So that kind of really controls the end of the session here. We're going to take some questions at the end of the webinar. So please, if you have questions, do fill those into the question pane, and we will get to those at the end of the session. I'm now going to hand over control for the licensing section. So Fabienne, it's over to you.
Good morning. My name is Fabienne and I'm going to talk to you about the SQL Server 2016 licensing. Before I do that, I'm just going to have a look at the additions with 2016 and what has changed from 2014 to 2016. So here's a view of what we had in 2014, and there are a few changes happening with 2016. So first we see the BI edition is actually been discontinued. Customers with the BI edition will be able to renew software assurance on the Enterprise Server and Cal Legacy edition. We'll have a look at how that edition is licensed a little bit later. The next one we see is Parallel Data Warehouse. That is also going and will actually be licensed with the Enterprise Core Edition. So if you purchase the Enterprise Core Edition, you'll be able to use the Parallel Data Warehouse. And finally, the SQL Server Developer is also going. It will either be licensed as part of the MSDN Professional and above, or will be available as part of Visual Studio Dev Essentials for non-enterprises. So that leaves us with 3 editions. Express, which is free and non-licensable. Standard, which is available Server and Cal or per core. And the Enterprise Edition license per core. So let's have a look at licensing for all of that. First, Server and Cal licensing. It's available for Standard and Legacy Enterprise. And the SQL Server CALs can be used against any server. So if you have 2016 CALs, you can use that against any Server and Cal license. CALs are available either per user or per device depending on your environment, and it is required even for indirect access. So what do I mean by indirect access? Well, say your user or device accesses an application, and that application has SQL Server as a backend. If that's the case, the user or the device is indirectly accessing SQL, meaning that you would need to have a SQL CAL for every user that indirectly accesses that. For the SQL Server licensing, as we've seen, can also be licensed per core. The core licensing is available for Standard and Enterprise Edition, and one change with the 2016 edition, with the 2016 version, is that there are no longer any core factor. So all we now do is apply a minimum of 4 core for both physical or virtual operating system environment. So how does that work, that core licensing? As I said, available for Standard and Enterprise. And what you do is you count the number of cores in the server. You either have a minimum of 4 core per physical processor, or if you install that virtually, you have a minimum of 4 core per virtual machine. So you have to buy a minimum of 4. And you buy that number of core licenses. These are always sold in a multiple of 2, so you'll buy packs of 2 licenses. And if you license SQL Server per core, you don't actually require any client access licenses. So let's have a look at deploying SQL. What we'll have a look at here is how to license the virtual machine on a server and cal basis, same again on a core basis, and then we'll have a look at failover and disaster recovery for SQL 2016. So first, let's have a look at licensing virtual machines on a server and cal basis. When you license SQL Server on a server and cal basis, you need to license every OSC in which SQL Server runs. So if that's in a virtual machine, so here you have 4 VMs, 2 of which are running SQL, you would need to license each individual virtual machine, so you need 2 licenses. You'd also need CALs for every user or device accessing those instances. Now, with the legacy server and cal edition for SQL Server, and that's for any customer that has either purchased SQL Server on a server and cal basis pre-2012, or customers now with Business Intelligence Edition that are renewing and upgrading to SQL Server 2016 Enterprise. It's licensed slightly differently, where one license actually covers 4 VMs, not 1, and that group of 4 VMs together cannot have more than 20 virtual cores. So all the 4 VMs cannot have more than 20 cores assigned. Again, we would need every user or device to have a server in CAL, and the license mobility is only available with software assurance. So now let's have a look at virtual machine licensing with cores. If you license SQL Server per core, if you license the standard or the enterprise edition, you will again license the individual virtual machine, but this time counting the number of cores you have assigned to those virtual machines. So here again for VMs, 2 instances of SQL Server, and you've assigned 2 cores to each of those virtual machines. Because there is a minimum of 4 core per virtual machine, you will need to buy 4 cores for each of them, meaning you will have 8 core licenses in total. So you license each virtual core assigned to each virtual machine with a minimum of 4 core per virtual machine. With the Enterprise Edition, you actually have more choices to license SQL Server depending on how many VMs you're running. You can do what is called unlimited virtualization. To do that, you license the physical server. So here we have a server with 2 processors, each with 4 cores. So you would license all 8 cores with software assurance, and that would allow you to run any number of VMs on that licensed host. So license all the physical core with the Enterprise Edition with software assurance to get unlimited virtualization. Now, the next thing to bear in mind when you license virtual machines is that those virtual machines may be dynamic. When you license virtual machines, even if you are assigning a license to the VM, that license is actually always assigned to the actual physical box. So if you have a SQL cluster, say here with 3 nodes, and your VMs are going from one host to another, you're not actually allowed to do that from a licensing perspective because the license is stuck from one host and cannot move more than every 90 days. There's 2 ways you can go about that. Either purchase 2 licenses here because you have 2 VMs on a cluster, which could get very expensive, or you could purchase software assurance on the virtual machine, and then that 90-day rule is removed and you can move those VMs from one host to another. So if you're licensing in individual virtual machines with standard or enterprise edition per core or per server and CAL, that is all you do and they'll be able to move. However, if you are licensing the physical host with enterprise with SA for unlimited virtualization, because the unlimited virtualization is only allowed for the licensed host, you would actually need to license every host in a cluster where SQL Server could sit for the ability to move those VMs. The next thing we'll have with software assurance is what is called license mobility for software assurance. And what that means is if you purchase your SQL Server with software assurance, either core with SA or server and CAL with software assurance, you can take those licenses and install them in the cloud, whether that's a service provider's data center or Azure. And the next thing as well is the failover service. Now, failover rights have actually been updated again with the 2016 release, where if you license an active server with software assurance, you get a passive server where you don't have to license it as a software assurance benefit. What has been updated is that if you decide to use your licenses, move them into Azure, you will again be allowed to run a passive server without the need to license it. So you can have active passive as an SA benefit on premises or active passive as an SA benefit in the cloud. What you can't do is do active on premises and passive in the cloud or vice versa. Finally, disaster recovery. You may have disaster recovery in your environments, and if you do, even though it is standoff, because it is actually installed, you do need to license it. So you have 2 choices: either purchase an actual license to license that server, or if you license the active server and the DR is called, so not running unless in case of a disaster or for testing purposes, you would get that as a software assurance benefit. So to finish, a little summary of what has changed with SQL Server 2016 from a licensing standpoint. Licensing model, apart from the removal of the core model, not any changes really here. Failover servers has been updated to give you active-passive in the cloud as well as on premises. The Parallel Data Warehouse server is now licensed with the Enterprise per Core edition. And BI has been removed, but customers with software assurance on the BI edition can run the legacy Enterprise server and CAL license.
Right, I think we're over to me now. Sorry, it's Maria.
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Maria.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry, I'm logging in remotely, so apologies if there's any inability to hear me there. So I've been asked to put a couple of slides together just to kind of bring the two elements that have been discussed in the earlier presentation together from a software asset management perspective. I don't know if you can flip to the next slide, Amy. Right, okay. Given that there's been a lot of sort of technology and capability changes in SQL 2016, and also with the advent of cloud, and also followed by additional licensing rule changes, it kind of leaves you in a bit of position where you need to kind of review and take stock of what you've currently got, and where you see your SQL strategy going, and software asset management can help in that respect. What we would do for customers around sort of SQL and their future goals in SQL is really starting at the very basics, is review your current deployment. You know, have you got licenses that you could use and optimize the configuration of them, either on-premise, or can we then use those if they've got software assurance, and do they have the right level of software assurance to allow those then to be migrated into cloud? And if so, which licenses would you then want to make that move to? So the first area that we would start would be to do a review of your current deployments for SQL, and provide effectively a license position around what you've currently got on-premise. If you've got a hybrid environment as well, we can take that into consideration and review what your license requirement is for your current configurations. And then sitting down with the technical architects to review where you see your future plans going, how can we make sure that that is still going to be fit for purpose as the technology is adopted and evolved within your current infrastructure as well? How do we future-proof it? If you can move on to the next slide as well. Thank you. So that we've talked, Neil talked a lot about how we could optimize the configurations around SQL, looking at the design, looking at increasing the high availability, performance, the real-time analytics, and in a lot of cases this provides you with a lot of technology benefits for your SQL environment. However, there needs to be accompanied with best practice and a certain amount of control around how you would actually enable additional CPU, for instance, to users, because it has a knock-on effect on the licensing. And it's really, when we take a review of your current infrastructure, we would look at your current process around how you currently manage that, how you then can reduce what licenses are available to consolidate, and then look at actually, are those workloads on those servers, are they actually the ones that we would be able to consolidate from a technical perspective as well. But we'd work with Northdoor to provide that sort of consultancy. Is there also benefits in us looking at different licensing models? So we currently have all of our SQL environment licensed in a production environment, but actually elements of that is actually test and development. So are there other routes that we could explore around MSDN licensing, and what are the implications of that, and do we need to ring fence that in some way by a naming convention or by a separate domain, or how does that look? Also looking at whether or not we need to move from a sort of standard licensing up to enterprise core to provide unlimited sort of availability and scalability of the number of VMs that we're running as we start to become more dependent on our virtual environment. And in terms of the DR facilities as well, how would that look in terms of a licensing perspective? So it's matching the sort of technical requirements that are coming up from your discussions around where you see the future map going for SQL against what the limitations are on your licensing, what you currently have, and whether or not we need to structure that into a new sort of agreement to enable you to purchase at a best price point around new licenses. And then finally, if you just move on to the next slide, please, Amy. Is there another one? Marvellous, okay. So just in summary then, an engagement around the SQL kind of modernisation piece, including the SAM element, would be a discussion around your programs and effectively baselining your current environment. So we'd run inventory, we'd actually discover the SQL instances that you have deployed, because in many cases as well it's very, very easy for there to be a disconnect between the sort of SQL administration teams and the IT infrastructure teams, so that VMs are spun up quite easily. A resource will be assigned to those quite readily, and in many cases it's sort of kind of thought that increasing the number of CPUs allocated to VM might improve the performance of SQL, but that's not necessarily the case. All it will do is actually increase the license requirement for those VMs in many cases, but it's really looking into what that looks like. We'd review the organisational objectives, make sure that we're all aligned, and also then review and validate your current license position against where you want to see it go. And we'll do a full assessment in terms of how does that look, and provide some possibilities around what the best licensing options would be for your organisation in terms of what your future goals are, and then working with Northdoor, they'd then be able to get in to add you in terms of looking at your overall design relative to where you want to see your cost of licensing sort of reducing and optimised, and whether or not that can be which options are available to meet your future business goals in SQL. And that's it from me. I'll hand you back to Amy now.
Thank you, Maria. Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to run a few quick Q&A. We do have a few questions. So, first of all, what is OLTP? I think that's for you, Neil.
Okay, so OLTP is online transactional processing. It's the acronym for effectively mainly kind of small transactions, and OLAP is the online analytics processing.
Thank you. Is reporting services always on cluster aware in SQL 2016?
So always on is cluster aware, because that's actually built on that technology. Reporting services as an infrastructure, we can effectively have dedicated reporting services deployments. So in a sense, you would be able to have the OLTP, the always on capability of the databases, the reporting service databases there, and the services as well. So yes.
Thank you. Fabienne, what kind of licenses needed to access SQL Server 2016 via a website?
If you're accessing SQL Server 16 via a website, you'll have quite a lot of users, so you can't actually do CALs mostly. So the best thing to do in that case is to license SQL Server per core, which gives you unlimited access.
And additionally, for CAL licensing, is that the concurrent user count or potential users?
Microsoft will never do concurrent user count, really. So with SQL Server CAL licensing, it will always be named users or named devices.
Okay. Another question is, we had heard that Server CAL licensing was not available in 2016. Has this changed?
No, so 2016 still has 2 editions available for Server and CAL. So you've got the Standard Edition, which is available to purchase, and the Enterprise Edition, where you cannot purchase new licenses, because you can renew SA on that.
Okay. And regarding licensing UAT and dev, do these now need to be developer editions? For example, if Standard Edition is being used for UAT, does it need to be licensed?
UNT and Dev, you can purchase MSDN licensing. If you're running the Standard Edition, purchase MSDN Professional or above, and it'll allow you to run that for UAT and Dev.
Thank you. Can SQL Server 2016 help an organisation which might think of big data management, Hadoop, and how? Neil, one for you.
Okay, so HT Insight is the kind of implementation for big data for kind of Hadoop clusters. You can run those and generate the activities you need as batch processes and have those processed. So Hadoop, the implementation for that SQL Server is HT Insight.
Okay, another question. Has the maximum memory and database size changed in SQL Server 2016 Express?
So there's been no changes in the capacity or performance of that. It's still going to be 4 cores or 1 processor, and it's limited to 10 gigs of data size.
Thank you. How do we reclaim the space after deletion of records in the table apart from using database shrink command?
Okay, so that's quite a complicated one, but effectively SQL Server itself kind of will deallocate the objects and then we'll reuse those when they've been made available as free space inside of the system. You would probably not want to shrink your database because that's going to have a negative impact on performance by adding fragmentation to your system. So you need to size your databases and then effectively let the internal free space grow and be reused and reconsumed as it goes.
Thank you, Neil. We have 8 people using HR software that uses SQL Server. Will they all need a CAL?
Yeah, they will all need a CAL because it's on a named user basis.
Thank you, Fabienne. Neil, we have tried installing SQL Server 2016 on mount points and have not been able to. Can this be verified, and if so, what can we do to try and resolve this?
Okay, so as far as I'm aware at the moment, there may be an issue with use of mount points for SQL Server 2016. I would need to look into that. I will do and get an answer back to you specifically on that question. I need to do some research on that one for you.
Thanks, Neil. A couple more questions. How long would SQL 2016 Enterprise writes through legacy 2014 BI version last? As long as the software assurance lasts?
Microsoft hasn't said they would remove the Enterprise Edition, Legacy Edition, so you will have the right to carry on using it for as long as you want to, really. Software assurance benefits will carry on for as long as you keep that going, and if you renew through the next version, there's a possibility that the Legacy Edition will go up again there.
Thank you, Fabienne. How does backup options compare between Azure and on-premise? Neil?
Okay, so there's a number of kind of improvements to backups. There's smart backups, encrypted backups, backup to Azure. So there's a number of capabilities. Depends on whether you're backing up from Azure or on-premises. Where you back up to, there's a number of options available to you. There is some differences, but fundamentally the backup process is the same, but it's just where the storage might be and whether you're going to use, for example, smart backup or backup to Azure, which obviously would only work from the on-premises. But if you're backing up from Azure itself, you effectively can back up to a storage account, a blob storage, for example, and be able to utilize that natively within the tool.
Thank you, Neil. And also, can we upgrade from 2005 to 2016? The slide showed 2005 to 2014.
Okay, so for example, 2005 to 2016 won't be a direct step. You would need to do an interim step. I think 2014 would be probably the current backup, the upgrade path. So you go from 2005 SP4, for example, directly to 2014, and then you probably do some final verification and do that final step to move to 2016. I would need to double check whether we can go straight to 2016, but as far as I'm aware at the moment, you would need to go through 2014 or 2012 to do that.
Thank you, Neil. Another question. Can we migrate database directly from SQL Server 2008 to SQL Server 2016 using migration tool?
So I think from 2008 we can, because there's basically a higher kind of starting point from that. So as far as I'm aware, 2008 to 2016 is a direct kind of one. The number of versions effectively that we are going to be able to jump is possible within that. So 2005 to 2014 or 2008 to 2016 on that. I will get confirmation on these processes for you, and we'll email out those instructions or answers for you as well.
And finally, does temporal tables replace CDC?
Okay, so does temporal tables replace CDC? CDC was change data capture, so effectively that might have been used for historical tracking of data changes through the system. So in a sense, the temporal tables will give you the same functionality in that we can actually see data change. Does it directly replace it? It depends really on the implementation of that, of what you're trying to do with CDC, and whether that can be replaced easily with the temporal tables. But the key functionality is we can actually track the changes. So fundamentally, we will be able to do this tracking of changes as well through temporal.
Thank you, Neil. I think that's just about everything. If there's any more questions popping up at the bottom. No, okay. Any other questions that anybody has, please feel free to email tellmemore@bytes.co.uk, and we can get the answers over to you as soon as possible. Anyway, thank you for joining us today on this webinar, and hope you all have a great day. Thank you.